Emma Martinez pushed her small hands against the wheels of her pink wheelchair, trying to get a better view through the crowd. At 8 years old, she had never seen anything as magnificent as the changing of the guard at Buckingham Palace. The morning sun painted the palace walls golden, and hundreds of tourists pressed forward, cameras ready, phones held high. Her mother, Sophia, bent down and adjusted Emma's position. "Can you see better now, mija?" she asked in her gentle voice, smoothing down Emma's dark curls that had gotten messy from the London wind. Emma nodded eagerly, her brown eyes sparkling with excitement. She had been looking forward to this moment for months, ever since the doctors told her family that her legs would never work the same way again after the car accident. Emma had found comfort in stories about brave soldiers and royal ceremonies. Her grandmother used to tell her tales about knights and castles, and now she was actually here in front of a real palace. The crowd grew thicker as the ceremony time approached. Adults towered over Emma's wheelchair like giant trees, and she struggled to see past their legs and bags. A kind elderly woman noticed her difficulty and gently tapped the shoulder of the man in front of Emma. "Excuse me, dear," the woman said with a proper British accent. "Could you perhaps step aside a bit? This little one can't see." The man looked down, saw Emma in her wheelchair, and immediately moved to the side with a warm smile. Soon, other people nearby did the same, creating a small, clear space for Emma. She felt her heart fill with gratitude, as strangers showed such kindness. Sophia squeezed her daughter's shoulder. "See how nice people can be?" she whispered. Emma's father, Carlos, stood behind them with his camera ready. He had taken time off from his construction job specifically for this family trip to London. Money had been tight since Emma's medical bills, but they had saved every penny they could for this vacation. Emma had been through so much pain and so many hospital visits that her parents wanted to give her something magical to remember. The sound of marching feet echoed across the courtyard. Emma's heart began to race with anticipation. She had watched videos of this ceremony online countless times, but being here in person felt completely different. The air seemed to buzz with excitement and history. "They're coming!" someone shouted from the crowd. Emma leaned forward in her wheelchair, gripping the armrests tightly. Her pink dress, the one her grandmother had bought especially for this trip, fluttered in the breeze. She had chosen to wear it because she wanted to look her best for this special day. The first guard appeared around the corner, his red uniform bright as fire, his black bearskin hat tall and imposing. Then came another and another. Soon, a whole line of guards marched in perfect formation, their boots hitting the ground in precise rhythm. The sound was like thunder, powerful and commanding. Emma had never seen anything so beautiful and organized. Each guard looked straight ahead, their faces serious and focused. Their uniforms were pristine, every button shining, every detail perfect. She watched in wonder as they moved like one person, each step exactly timed with the others. The crowd fell silent, mesmerized by the display of discipline and tradition. Even the chattering tourists stopped talking, swept up in the solemnity of the moment. Emma felt goosebumps rise on her arms as the guards continued their march. As the ceremony progressed, Emma noticed something about the guards that fascinated her. Despite the crowds of people around them, despite the cameras flashing and tourists calling out, the guards never looked away from their duty. They maintained their focus and dignity no matter what happened around them. "Mama," Emma whispered. "They're so brave." Sophia nodded, understanding what her daughter meant. These guards represented something bigger than themselves: duty, honor, service to others. It was a concept that resonated deeply with Emma, who had learned about courage in her own way over the past year. The main ceremony began in earnest now. Commands were shouted in crisp, clear voices that echoed off the palace walls. The guards performed their movements with clockwork precision, turning and marching in patterns that had been perfected over centuries. Emma watched every moment with intense concentration. She memorized the way they held their rifles, the angle of their hats, the serious expressions on their visible faces. Everything about them spoke of respect and dedication. As one particular guard marched closer to where Emma sat, she felt an overwhelming surge of emotion. Here was someone who represented everything she admired: strength, commitment, and service to others. Without thinking, her small hand moved up to her forehead in the best salute her 8-year-old coordination could manage. Her parents noticed what she was doing, and Sophia felt tears prick her eyes. Carlos quietly raised his camera, sensing that something special was about to happen. Other people in the crowd began to notice the little girl in the wheelchair, sitting up as straight as she could, offering her sincere salute to the passing guard. The guard was just a few feet away now, marching in perfect step with his fellow soldiers. According to protocol, according to centuries of tradition, he should keep his eyes forward, maintain his composure, and continue with the ceremony exactly as trained. But sometimes, the human heart recognizes something that rules and protocols cannot account for. Sometimes a moment of genuine connection transcends all the formal structures we create. Emma held her salute steady, her young face serious and respectful, her brown eyes filled with admiration and hope. She didn't expect anything in return. She was simply expressing her respect in the only way she knew how. The guard's peripheral vision caught sight of the small figure in the wheelchair. Despite his training, despite the weight of tradition and protocol, something made him glance down at the little girl offering her heartfelt salute to him and everything he represented. Guard James Mitchell had been serving at Buckingham Palace for 3 years. At 26 years old, he had performed this ceremony hundreds of times. The routine was embedded in his muscle memory. Keep your eyes forward, maintain perfect posture, never break formation, never acknowledge the crowd. These rules weren't suggestions. They were absolute requirements that had been drilled into him since his first day of training. But as he marched past the crowd that morning, something caught his attention that he couldn't ignore. A small girl in a wheelchair, wearing a pink dress, was sitting perfectly straight and offering him the most sincere military salute he had ever seen. Her little hand was positioned exactly right. Her face was serious and respectful, and her eyes held a depth of admiration that pierced straight through his professional composure. James had grown up in a military family. His father had served in the Royal Navy, and his grandfather had fought in World War II. He understood the meaning behind a salute. It wasn't just a gesture. It was a symbol of respect, honor, and recognition between those who serve and those who appreciate that service. This little girl clearly understood that meaning too. For a split second, James felt his training war with his instincts. Every fiber of his professional conditioning told him to keep marching, to maintain the dignity of the ceremony, to follow protocol without deviation. But his heart told him something different entirely. He saw the hope in the child's eyes, the way she held her salute with such determination, despite what appeared to be significant physical challenges. Her parents stood behind her. The mother, with tears in her eyes, the father capturing the moment with his camera. This wasn't a tourist trying to get attention or cause a disruption. This was a child offering genuine respect. James made a decision that would change everything. Without breaking his marching rhythm, without turning his head or making any obvious movement that would disrupt the ceremony, James did something extraordinary. He subtly shifted his right hand, bringing it up in a barely perceptible but unmistakable return salute. It lasted only a second, but it was there. A recognition, an acknowledgement, a moment of human connection that transcended all the rules and regulations. Emma's face transformed the instant she saw the guard's response. Her eyes widened with pure joy and disbelief. The guard had seen her. More than that, he had saluted her back. Her smile was so radiant that it seemed to light up the entire courtyard. "Did you see that?" she whispered excitedly to her mother, her voice trembling with emotion. Sophia had seen it too, and the tears that had been threatening to fall now flowed freely down her cheeks. "Yes, mija, I saw it," she whispered back, her voice thick with emotion. Carlos had captured the entire exchange on camera, though he barely believed what he had witnessed. In all his research about the Royal Guards, he had read about their strict protocols, their unwavering discipline, their absolute commitment to procedure. What had just happened shouldn't have been possible, yet it had occurred right before their eyes. The other tourists nearby had noticed something special had happened too. Word began to spread quietly through the crowd about the little girl in the wheelchair and the guard who had acknowledged her salute. People turned to look at Emma with warm smiles, and several had tears in their eyes. James continued marching with his unit, but something inside him had fundamentally changed. In that brief moment of connection with the little girl, he had remembered why he had chosen this profession in the first place. It wasn't just about ceremony and tradition. It was about serving something greater than himself, about representing the best qualities of duty and honor. He thought about his own childhood, about the times he had watched military parades and ceremonies with wonder and admiration. He remembered being Emma's age and dreaming of becoming a soldier, of wearing a uniform and serving his country. That little girl in the wheelchair had reminded him of that pure, innocent respect for service and sacrifice. As the ceremony continued, James found himself thinking about courage in a new way. He had always associated courage with military operations, with facing danger and adversity in defense of others. But watching that little girl maintain her perfect salute, despite whatever challenges she had faced in her young life, he realized that courage came in many forms. The girl's parents had noticed other people in the crowd taking pictures and videos of the moment. Some tourists approached them quietly, asking if it would be okay to share what they had witnessed. Sophia and Carlos, still emotional from what had happened, agreed that such a beautiful moment deserved to be shared with others. Emma remained in a state of pure joy for the rest of the ceremony. She watched every movement of the guards with even greater interest now, feeling a special connection to their service. When the guard who had saluted her marched past again during the ceremony's conclusion, she offered another small salute, and though he couldn't respond again without drawing unwanted attention, she was sure she saw the slightest nod of recognition. After the ceremony ended and the crowds began to disperse, the Martinez family remained in their spot for a few extra minutes. Emma wanted to savor every detail of what had happened, to burn it into her memory forever. "Papa," she said, looking up at Carlos, "that guard saw me, really saw me." Carlos knelt down beside his daughter's wheelchair, his eyes still misty with emotion. "Yes, Princesa, he did. And he saw something very special in you." "What did he see?" Emma asked, her curiosity genuine. "He saw a brave little girl who understands what respect and honor mean," Sophia answered, stroking her daughter's hair. "He saw someone who, despite everything she's been through, still believes in goodness and ceremony, and showing appreciation for others." Emma nodded thoughtfully. The car accident that had changed her life had taken away the use of her legs, but it had also taught her things about strength and perseverance that many adults never learned. She had spent months in physical therapy, endured countless medical procedures, and faced the reality that her life would be different from other children her age. But in that moment, receiving recognition from the Royal Guard, Emma felt more powerful and more valued than she had since before her accident. The guard's simple gesture had told her that her respect mattered, that she was seen and appreciated, that her courage was recognized by someone who understood what courage really meant. News of the extraordinary moment between Emma and the Royal Guard began spreading faster than anyone could have imagined. Carlos had shared the video with his sister back in San Antonio, who posted it on social media with a simple caption, "My niece Emma gets acknowledged by a Buckingham Palace guard. Sometimes the smallest gestures mean everything." Within hours, the video had been shared thousands of times. People from around the world were commenting about the beauty of the moment, the courage of both the little girl and the guard who chose humanity over protocol. Major news outlets picked up the story, and suddenly Emma's moment of joy became a symbol of something much larger. Back at Buckingham Palace, James Mitchell was unaware that his split-second decision had been captured and was spreading across the internet. He had finished his shift and returned to his quarters, where he continued to think about the little girl in the wheelchair. He wondered about her story, about what had brought her to that wheelchair, about the strength it must have taken for her to sit so proudly and offer such a perfect salute. His commanding officer, Colonel William Hartwell, knocked on James's door that evening. The colonel was a stern man in his 50s who had dedicated his life to military protocol and discipline. James felt a knot form in his stomach as he opened the door. "Mitchell," the colonel said, his expression unreadable. "I need to speak with you about today's ceremony." James's heart sank. Someone had seen his deviation from protocol. Someone had reported his unauthorized salute. He had known the risks when he made that decision, and now he was going to face the consequences. "Yes, sir," James replied, standing at attention. "There's been some attention given to an interaction you had with a child in the crowd today, Colonel," Hartwell continued. "Are you aware of this?" "I'm not sure what you mean, sir," James answered honestly. He had no idea about the video or the social media attention. Colonel Hartwell pulled out his phone and showed James the video that was now being viewed by millions of people around the world. James watched himself march past Emma, saw the moment. When he returned her salute, witnessed the transformation of joy on her face. "That's you, isn't it, Mitchell?" the colonel asked. "Yes, sir," James admitted, bracing himself for disciplinary action. What happened next surprised him completely. Colonel Hartwell's stern expression softened and he actually smiled. "Son," he said, "do you know what this video has done?" James shook his head, still confused about whether he was in trouble or not. "This video has been shared millions of times. In just one day, people around the world are talking about it. They're saying it shows the true spirit of what we represent here, not just ceremony and tradition, but compassion and recognition of courage wherever we find it." The colonel sat down in James's small chair and continued. "I've been doing this job for 30 years and I've seen thousands of guards perform thousands of ceremonies. Protocol exists for good reasons and we maintain it because it preserves the dignity and meaning of what we do." James nodded, still unsure where this conversation was heading. "But," Colonel Hartwell continued, "sometimes protocol serves the spirit of our mission, and sometimes the spirit of our mission requires us to go beyond protocol. What you did today, the recognition you gave that brave little girl, that served the highest ideals of what we're supposed to represent." James felt a wave of relief wash over him, followed immediately by curiosity about what had happened after he left the ceremony. Meanwhile, back at their London hotel, the Martinez family was experiencing something completely unexpected. Emma's parents' phones had been ringing constantly with calls from reporters, bloggers, and people from around the world who wanted to hear more about Emma's story. Emma herself was fascinated by all the attention, but remained focused on the simple joy of what had happened. She had rewatched the video dozens of times, each viewing bringing back the magical feeling of being acknowledged by the guard. "Mama," she said as Sophia helped her get ready for bed, "why are so many people interested in what happened?" Sophia thought carefully about how to explain it. "I think, mi amor, that people don't often see moments of pure goodness anymore. When they saw that guard choose to recognize your respect and courage, it reminded them that there are still people in the world who do the right thing even when it might get them in trouble." "Was the guard in trouble for saluting me back?" Emma asked, concern creeping into her voice. "I don't know, sweetheart," Sophia answered honestly. "But I hope not. What he did was beautiful." Carlos had been monitoring the social media response to the video, and he was amazed by what he was seeing. Comments were pouring in from people sharing their own stories about overcoming adversity, about moments when strangers had shown them unexpected kindness, about the importance of recognizing courage in all its forms. One comment particularly stood out to him. "My daughter is also in a wheelchair, and she's been feeling sad about being different lately. When I showed her this video, she asked if she could learn how to salute properly, so she could show respect like Emma did. Sometimes children teach us the most important lessons about dignity and honor." Another read, "I'm a veteran and I've never seen a more perfect salute than the one that little girl gave. The guard who recognized her understood something fundamental about what service means. It's about seeing and acknowledging the best in others." The story had reached far beyond just social media. News programs around the world were featuring the video, often using it as a counterpoint to negative stories about division and conflict. Here was something purely positive, a moment of human connection that transcended all the barriers that usually separate people. A famous talk show host, had reached out asking if Emma and her family would be interested in appearing on television to share their story. Several children's charities had contacted them about Emma potentially becoming an ambassador for young people with disabilities. A publisher had even inquired about the possibility of turning Emma's story into a children's book. But Emma remained, focused on the simple truth of what had happened. A guard had seen her, recognized her respect, and responded with kindness. Everything else was just noise around that perfect, pure moment of connection. She fell asleep that night holding the small British flag her parents had bought her as a souvenir, dreaming of red uniforms and precise marching, of moments when doing the right thing matters more than following every rule. 3 days after the ceremony, something unprecedented happened at Buckingham Palace. Colonel Hartwell received a call from the highest levels of the royal household, informing him that the Queen's private secretary wanted to discuss the incident, involving Guard Mitchell and the young visitor. James was summoned to a meeting in an ornate room he had never seen before, where officials he recognized only from formal photographs sat around a polished mahogany table. His heart pounded as he entered, still uncertain whether he was about to be commended or court-martialed. The Queen's private secretary, a distinguished gentleman named Sir Frederick Pemberton, looked up as James entered. "Guard Mitchell," he said in a crisp, formal voice, "please take a seat." James sat rigidly at attention, his eyes fixed straight ahead. "The video of your interaction with the young American visitor has reached the attention of Her Majesty, sir," Frederick continued. "I'm told it has been viewed over 50 million times worldwide and has generated an unprecedented positive response about the Royal Guard and, by extension, the royal family." James remained silent, unsure if a response was expected. "What you did," Sir Frederick said, his formal tone softening slightly, "violated standard protocol. However, it embodied something far more important than protocol. It demonstrated the values that the Royal Guard and the Crown are meant to represent: compassion, recognition of courage, and the understanding that true honor sometimes requires flexibility in the face of exceptional circumstances." Sir Frederick stood and walked to the window overlooking the palace grounds. "Her Majesty has requested that I convey a message to you. She was deeply moved by the video and believes that your response to the young lady showed exactly the kind of judgment and humanity she hopes to see in those who serve the Crown." James felt his breath catch in his throat. The Queen herself had seen the video and approved of his actions. "Furthermore," Sir Frederick continued, "we have received a formal request from the young lady's family through their embassy. They are returning to America tomorrow, but they have asked if it might be possible for her to meet you personally before they leave London." Meanwhile, at their hotel, Emma was having mixed feelings about their impending departure. While she was excited to return home and share her story with friends and teachers, she felt sad about leaving London, the place where her magical moment had occurred. Sophia noticed her daughter's thoughtful mood as she packed their suitcase. "What are you thinking about, Mija?" "I wish I could thank the guard," Emma said simply. "He made me feel so special, and I want him to know how much it meant to me." Carlos looked up from his own packing. The past few days had been overwhelming, with all the media attention, but he had been most impressed by Emma's grace throughout everything. She had handled interviews with remarkable poise for an 8-year-old, always focusing on gratitude rather than seeking attention for herself. "Actually, Princesa," Carlos said with a mysterious smile, "there might be a way for that to happen." Emma's eyes widened with curiosity. Earlier that morning, Carlos had received a call from someone at the American embassy. The conversation had been surreal. Apparently, the palace had reached out through official diplomatic channels with an unusual request. "What do you mean, Papa?" Emma asked. Before Carlos could answer, his phone rang. It was the embassy again, this time with final confirmation of arrangements that still seemed impossible to believe. "Emma," Sophia said, sitting down beside her daughter's wheelchair, "how would you feel about going back to Buckingham Palace tomorrow morning?" "To watch another ceremony?" Emma asked. "No, sweetheart," Carlos said, ending his phone call with a huge grin. "To meet the guard who saluted you back." Emma's reaction was everything her parents had hoped for. Pure, unbridled joy spread across her face as she realized what they were telling her. she would actually get to meet the guard, to thank him personally, to look him in the eye and tell him what his gesture had meant to her. "Really?" she whispered, as if speaking too loudly might make the wonderful possibility disappear. "Really?" Sophia confirmed, tears of happiness in her eyes once again. That evening, James received his own briefing about the planned meeting. It would take place in a private garden area of the palace, away from tourists and media attention. Emma and her family would be given a brief tour, and then James would have the opportunity to speak with her personally. "This is highly unusual," Colonel Hartwell told James as they discussed the arrangements. "In my 30 years here, I've never seen the palace arrange a private meeting between a guard and a member of the public. But then again, I've never seen a video go viral like this one either." James spent that night thinking about what he would say to Emma when they met. He realized he wanted to thank her as much as she probably wanted to thank him. Her simple, sincere salute had reminded him of the deeper meaning behind everything he did, had reconnected him with the ideals that had drawn him to military service in the first place. He also thought about courage. In his training and service, he had learned to recognize different types of bravery: the courage of soldiers in combat, the dedication of those who serve despite personal sacrifice, the strength required to maintain discipline and honor under pressure. But Emma had shown him another type of courage entirely: the bravery of maintaining dignity and respect in the face of physical challenges, the strength to find joy and meaning despite difficulties that would break many adults. The next morning dawned clear and bright, as if the weather itself was celebrating the extraordinary meeting about to take place. Emma woke early, more excited than she had ever been in her life. She chose her outfit carefully, the same pink dress she had worn to the ceremony, because she wanted the guard to recognize her immediately, as the Martinez family prepared to leave their hotel for the last time. Carlos reflected on how much their lives had changed in just a few days. What had started as a simple family vacation to give Emma a special experience had turned into something none of them could have imagined. The video of Emma and the guard had become more than just a viral moment. It had become a symbol of hope and human connection that resonated with people around the world. Messages continued to pour in from families dealing with similar challenges, from military personnel and veterans, from people who simply needed to see evidence that kindness and recognition still existed in the world. But for Emma, all of that external attention paled in comparison to the simple prospect of meeting the person who had made her feel seen and valued. She was about to have a conversation with someone who had shown her that respect and acknowledgement could transcend any barrier, including the rigid protocols of one of the world's most formal institutions. The private entrance to Buckingham Palace looked different in the morning light. Where tourists usually crowded against the gates, there was now a quiet dignity, as Emma and her family were escorted through security by palace officials. Emma's wheelchair moved smoothly across the ancient stones, and she marveled at actually being inside the grounds she had only seen from the outside. Sir Frederick Pemberton greeted them personally, his formal demeanor softened by genuine warmth. "Miss Martinez," he said, bending slightly to be at Emma's eye level, "it is truly an honor to meet you. Your conduct during the changing of the guard ceremony has been an inspiration to many people, including members of the royal household." Emma, despite her young age, understood the significance of the moment and responded with the same grace she had shown throughout this extraordinary experience. "Thank you, sir. I'm very grateful to be here." The tour that followed was unlike anything the Martinez family could have imagined. They were shown rooms that most visitors never see, told stories about the palace's history, and treated with a level of respect and attention that felt almost surreal. But Emma's focus remained on one thing: the upcoming meeting with the guard, who had acknowledged her salute. In another part of the palace, James Mitchell was receiving his own final preparations for the meeting. He had changed from his ceremonial uniform into his dress uniform, as this was to be a personal meeting rather than an official ceremony. "Remember," Colonel Hartwell advised him, "this little girl has captured the imagination of the world not because she was seeking attention, but because she showed genuine respect and dignity. Respond to her in the same spirit." James nodded, though he was more nervous about this meeting than he had been about any military exercise or ceremony. There was something about Emma's pure sincerity that had moved him deeply, and he wanted to make sure their face-to-face meeting lived up to the special moment they had already shared. The private garden where they were to meet was a small, peaceful space surrounded by high walls that blocked out all the noise and bustle of London beyond. Flowers bloomed in carefully maintained beds, and a fountain provided gentle background music. It was a place designed for quiet contemplation and important conversations. When Emma's wheelchair rolled into the garden, she saw James immediately. Even out of his ceremonial red uniform, she recognized him instantly. He stood at attention initially, but as she approached, his formal posture relaxed into something more natural and welcoming. "Hello, Emma," James said, his voice gentle but clear. "I'm James Mitchell." "Hello, Mr. James," Emma replied, her voice betraying a slight tremor of excitement and awe. "Thank you for saluting me back." The simplicity and directness of her words struck James immediately. Here was a child who understood exactly what had happened between them and why it mattered, without any need for complex explanations or adult interpretations. "Thank you for saluting me first," James replied. "It was perfect." "Where did you learn to salute like that?" Emma's face lit up with pride. "My grandfather taught me. He was a soldier in Mexico before he came to America. He said a salute is how soldiers show respect to each other." James knelt down so he was at Emma's eye level, a gesture that immediately put her at ease. "Your grandfather was absolutely right, and your salute showed me that you understand what respect really means." Sophia and Carlo stood nearby, watching this interaction with deep emotion. They could see how much this meeting meant to their daughter, how being taken seriously by this young soldier was validating her sense of dignity and worth. "Can I ask you something?" Emma said, her natural curiosity overcoming any nervousness she might have felt. "Of course," James replied. "Were you scared you would get in trouble for saluting me back?" James considered the question seriously, appreciating that Emma understood there had been risk involved in his decision. "I knew it was against the rules," he said honestly, "but sometimes doing the right thing is more important than following rules." Emma nodded thoughtfully. "That's what my mama always tells me. She says being good is more important than being perfect." The wisdom in those words, coming from an 8-year-old girl, struck James profoundly. This child had learned lessons about integrity and character that many adults struggled with their entire lives. "Your mama is very wise," James said. "And so are you. The way you sat so straight in your wheelchair, the way you held your salute, with such respect, that took real courage." "I don't feel very brave sometimes," Emma admitted quietly. "Since my accident, lots of things are harder for me than they used to be." James felt a deep respect for this little girl's honesty about her struggles. "Can I tell you something about courage?" he asked. Emma nodded eagerly. "The bravest people I know aren't the ones who never feel scared or sad. They're the ones who feel those things but keep going anyway, who find ways to show respect and kindness, even when they're dealing with hard things themselves." Emma considered this carefully. "Like how you were brave to salute me back even though you could get in trouble." "Exactly like that," James confirmed. "And like how you were brave to come to the ceremony, even though it might be hard to see from your wheelchair, and how you chose to show respect instead of just watching." Their conversation continued for nearly an hour, covering topics that ranged from Emma's recovery process to James's military training, from her dreams of becoming a teacher to his hopes of advancing in his military career. Despite their difference in age and experience, they connected on a level of mutual respect and understanding. James told Emma about his own grandfather, who had served in World War II and had taught him about the importance of standing up for others. Emma shared stories about her grandmother's tales of brave knights and noble deeds, explaining how those stories had helped her through the most difficult days of her recovery. "I have something for you," James said eventually, reaching into his pocket. He pulled out a small pin, the insignia of the Royal Guard, and held it out to Emma. "This is for soldiers who show exceptional courage. I think you've earned it." Emma's eyes filled with tears of joy as she accepted the pin. It was small and simple, but to her it represented recognition from someone she deeply respected. validation that her struggles and her attempts to maintain dignity and respect hadn't gone unnoticed. "I have something for you too," Emma said, reaching into the small bag attached to her wheelchair. She pulled out a drawing she had made the night before, a picture of a royal guard standing at attention, with "Thank you" written in careful 8-year-old handwriting below it. James accepted the drawing with the same seriousness he would have given to an official commendation. "This is wonderful, Emma. I'm going to keep this forever." As their meeting drew to a close, both Emma and James realized they had given each other something precious: recognition, validation, and proof that respect and kindness could bridge any gap between people. 6 months after their meeting at Buckingham Palace, Emma Martinez was back in her classroom in San Antonio, Texas. But her life had changed in ways no one could have predicted. The Royal Guard pin James had given her sat proudly on her desk, a daily reminder of the extraordinary connection she had made with someone half a world away. Her story had continued to resonate with people around the globe. The video of her salute and James's response had been translated into dozens of languages and shared in countries Emma couldn't even pronounce. But more importantly, it had inspired real change in how people thought about courage, respect, and human dignity. Emma had become an unofficial ambassador for children with disabilities, not because she sought attention, but because her natural grace and wisdom made her a powerful voice for others facing similar challenges. Schools across America invited her to speak about resilience and respect, and she always began her presentations with the same simple message: everyone deserves to be seen and recognized for their courage. The pin James had given her had inspired a nationwide program called Courage Pins, where teachers and community leaders recognized young people who showed bravery in overcoming personal challenges. Emma served on the advisory board, helping to identify recipients and sharing her story with each new group of honorees. Her physical therapy sessions, once a source of frustration and pain, had taken on new meaning. Emma approached each session with the same determination she had shown when saluting the Royal Guard. Her therapists were amazed by her positive attitude and steady progress. She had regained significant strength in her core muscles and had even begun taking a few steps, with assistance, something doctors had said might never be possible. "I want to be strong like a soldier," Emma would tell her therapist, Dr. Rodriguez, during particularly challenging sessions. "Soldiers don't give up, and neither do I." Dr. Rodriguez had watched many children struggle with similar injuries, but Emma's mental approach to her recovery was unlike anything she had seen before. The 8-year-old had somehow internalized lessons about duty, honor, and perseverance that typically took adults years to learn. Meanwhile, across the Atlantic, James Mitchell's life had also transformed in unexpected ways. The recognition he had received for his compassionate response to Emma had led to new opportunities within the Royal Guard. He had been selected for special assignments that required not just military precision, but also the kind of judgment and humanity he had displayed that day outside Buckingham Palace. Colonel Hartwell had recommended James for officer training, citing his ability to balance protocol with human compassion as exactly the kind of leadership the modern military needed. James was now studying for his commission while continuing his duties as a guard, and he carried Emma's drawing with him wherever he went. The international attention their story had received had also led to an ongoing correspondence between Emma and James. With permission from both the palace and Emma's parents, they exchanged letters every few weeks. Emma wrote about her progress in physical therapy, her school activities, and her continued advocacy work. James shared stories about his training, his experiences with other ceremonies, and his own growing understanding of what true service meant. In one particularly meaningful letter, Emma had written, "Dear James, my teacher asked me what I learned from meeting you. I told her that I learned that good people see other good people even when they're supposed to be looking somewhere else. I think that's what love really means, seeing the good in people and letting them know you see it." James had read that letter dozens of times, each reading revealing new depths of wisdom from this remarkable child. He had shared it with his fellow guards, and it had become an unofficial motto for their unit. See the good in people and let them know you see it. The story had reached even higher levels of recognition when the British government announced a new initiative called the Emma Martinez International Youth Courage Award. given annually to young people who demonstrated exceptional bravery in overcoming personal challenges while showing compassion for others. Emma would travel to London each year to help present the award, creating an annual reunion with James and the palace staff who had become like family to her. But perhaps the most profound impact of their story was seen in the countless individual lives it had touched. Letters poured in from around the world, from children in wheelchairs who had been inspired to pursue their dreams, from military personnel who had been reminded of the deeper meaning of their service, from parents who had learned new ways to help their children find strength in adversity. One letter that particularly moved Emma came from a little boy in Australia who had lost his leg in a farming accident. He wrote, "Dear Emma, I saw your video and learned how to salute. Now when I feel sad about my leg, I salute myself in the mirror and remember that I'm brave too. Thank you for showing me how to be proud of my courage." Emma had that letter framed and hung in her bedroom next to a photo from her meeting with James at Buckingham Palace. Every night before bed, she would look at both and remember that sometimes the smallest gestures create the biggest changes. On the first anniversary of their meeting, Emma received a special package from London. Inside was a letter from James and a new photo, him standing with the current class of Royal Guard trainees, all of whom had been told Emma's story as part of their training about the importance of seeing and acknowledging courage wherever it appears. The letter read, "Dear Emma, 1 year ago you taught me that protocol serves people, not the other way around. Today I'm helping train new guards, and I tell each of them about a brave little girl who showed me what real honor looks like. You changed not just my life, but the way an entire institution thinks about its purpose. Thank you for your courage, your respect, and your friendship. With admiration and affection, James." Emma's mother, Sophia, found her daughter crying happy tears as she read the letter. "What is it, mija?" she asked gently. "James says I changed how the guards think about their job," Emma said through her tears. "I didn't know one little salute could do so much." Sophia knelt beside her daughter's wheelchair and hugged her tightly. "That's because it wasn't just a salute, Emma. It was a moment of pure love and respect between two brave people. Those moments change everything, even when we don't realize it at the time." As Emma grew older, she never forgot the lesson she had learned that day outside Buckingham Palace. She understood that recognition and respect were among the most powerful gifts one person could give another, and that sometimes breaking the rules in service of human dignity was the most honorable thing anyone could do. Years later, when Emma graduated from college with a degree in education, she dedicated her diploma to James Mitchell and all the brave people who choose to see and acknowledge the courage in others. She went on to become a teacher herself, always looking for opportunities to recognize the unique strengths and bravery in each of her students. The video of Emma's salute and James's response still circulates on the internet, viewed by new generations of people who need to be reminded that kindness, respect, and human connection can transcend any barrier. But for Emma and James, the real legacy of that moment wasn't the global attention it received. It was the personal transformation it created in both of their lives, and the ripple effect of compassion it sent out into the world. Their story became proof that sometimes the most important moments in our lives last only a few seconds, but their impact can resonate for decades, touching countless lives and reminding everyone who hears it that courage comes in many forms, and that recognizing courage in others is one of the highest forms of service we can offer.